Hi, welcome back. So we are on to our next set of families. Let's go going. Alright, I'm walking you to our next family and genus, but I just wanted to give you a little tour of the borders here in the front of our North Shore lagoon. So I'm trying to get a tropical theme here going with colorful, bold foliage, color later in the season with 2 annuals. Of course, we've got to have palms, bananas, and tetrapanics. But one plant that we did not put in that was already here that I want to show you is our next family and genus Juglandaceae. Juglans is the genus. It's the black walnut. So if we look at this closely, normally, of course, walnut can be a large tree, so you'll see one main large trunk and a canopy of these beautiful leaves. So to me, identifying it for the foliage, if we look up and the pattern, the texture that it creates helps me identify this particular plant. So in terms of diagnostic traits, there aren't really much right now, minus the very long leaves here with the multiple leaflets, easily over a foot long, sometimes 2 feet in length, lightly pubescent in the new growth, and it does have a scent to it when you rub and crush the leaves that helps you identify it. I think it's very similar in appearance to the genus Rus or the sumac in the Anacardiaceae, and so you might compare the two to make sure. Our next family is Lamiaceae, which is the mint family. And it's one of my favorites because it is one of the families with opposite leaf arrangement, and it's also a family of very common garden plants and also edible plants. So obviously the mint, mentha is in this family, and a few others. So let's look at the few that are on your list. Alright, another shrub or tree in the mint family, Lamiaceae. Again, let's look for those diagnostic traits. Opposite, yes. This is the genus Chlorodundron, and I'm kind of bummed that you guys have to learn this one. It's kind of nondescript in a way. It could be a number of different things. You can definitely identify this when it's in bloom. It has clusters of fragrant flowers, but also when it's in fruit. It has wonderful bright blue fruit with bright calyxes on them, so quite interesting. But at this time of year, it's kind of like, bleh. But anyway, what's going to give this away, if this were in your exam, is, again, look for those diagnostic traits, mainly the opposite leaf arrangement, cordate leaves, so heart-shaped foliage. But if you brush up against it and smell it, it's, some people say it smells kind of like peanut butter. I just think it smells gross, but anyway, at least it's very distinct to help you identify it. So Chlorodundron, Alright, we're gonna go for a little hike through our west slope here, looking for our next plant in the Lamiaceae, and there it is. Another small tree that's very late to leaf out is this. No, it's not pot, although it looks very, very similar in terms of its leaf shape. This is Vitex, the genus Vitex. Angus cassis is the species, and in the Lamiaceae, so if you look closely, of course, we have opposite leaf arrangement there, and the palmate leaflets are probably the giveaway. So, you know, almost maple-like, looks like pot, but also it has a very distinct scent that gives it away. Our next plant is in the Litheraceae. So it just occurred to me that I didn't really know this family, but I'm very familiar with this genus. This is Lagostromia indica. Oh no, just okay, Lagostromia. So the crepe myrtle. So as you can see, it's just starting to leaf out right now, and it's one of those plants that quite distinct in the landscape, especially when they're mature. It has this beautiful, beautiful bark and coloration to them, especially as they mature. And in late summer here, they're often covered in flowers, but it needs to get hot enough for them to actually flower properly in our area. So I always tell clients that see this plant and think, oh my gosh, I want a crepe myrtle for my garden, or they're from the south, or from a warmer region and have a very close attachment to it. I tell them, well, they grow in the Northwest, but they may not flower. So I just try to sell them on the shape and the structure of the tree itself, and the flowers are basically icing on the cake, I say. So it's just leafing out right now, but you want to look for is mainly the trunk. I mean, that's it. It's such a giveaway. But the foliage, if you look at it closely, opposite leaves, or no, opposite, alternate. Oh, they're alternate. Okay. And just look at the trunk and the bark. It's an easy giveaway. All right, our next family is Magnolia Aca. And what we're looking at here is a very mature specimen of Magnolia excellengiana. So probably the most common of the magnolias that you'll see in the landscape, also known as the tulip tree. It's one of its common names. So the genus in itself, let's look at a few good diagnostic traits to help you identify it. So for me, Magnolia is a giveaway. With, well, the buds for me help. There's this sort of bract that covers the developing bud, and also the stems. If you look at it closely, there's the spots. You'll see the spotting all along the stems, and also you'll see remnants of buds that, well, right now they're all leafed out, so they're not really apparent. So it's just finished blooming. But the dead giveaway to this family is the developing fruit, which is known as a follicle. Let's see if I can get this to focus. There we are. So this will eventually swell, and seed will develop, or will form inside. And so yeah, and for me, Magnolia Aca, the parts of the plant, whether it's the foliage, the bark, when crushed, to me has a scent, so that helps me identify it to genus. And so yeah, let's look at a few other magnolias. Alright, we're on the west side of the hotel, and I'm going to step into the bed here to try and get to our next plant that I want to show. Luckily, there are no hotel guests yet. Well, there are a few, but I don't think they're in these rooms. But anyway. Okay, ouch. Okay. Ooh, that seeped itself. Okay, so our next plant is Magnolia. This is Magnolia Seiboldii, and I am trying to find flower for you. Oh, there's a bud. And okay, let's have a look at the flower here. So it didn't quite fully open, but I'm going to tease it open so you can see the red stamens that make this plant really distinct. So normally these are covered in these white flowers with the red centers here, and they droop and hang down with this particular species. But again, typical magnolia in terms of leaf arrangement, the spotting on the stems, and the overall habit of it. It almost reminds me of Hamamalidaceae, but but in here in this Magnolia Seiboldii, it's the veins aren't as impressed or as accordion-like almost, like you would see in Hamamalidaceae, so you shouldn't confuse it. But yeah, at this time of year, late May, early June, you should be able to identify it with either the buds or the flowers like I've shown you, or a dead giveaway is the developing follicle right there. Yeah, that's Magnolia Aca. Okay, now I'm really taking you behind the scenes. Ignore the weeds. So here is another magnolia. So believe it or not, can you tell that this is one of that Magnolia Aca is one of its parents? This is a very unusual hybrid between Magnolia Aca and a species called Magnolia ovovata, and it's called Magnolia X Wisneri. I keep butchering the name of it, but it is an exquisite flower. So, as you can see, the very prominent follicle there, prominent red stamens, and it's just past its peak. Normally it's pure cream white, and it's a lovely, lovely scent. And there's actually one open. I have two right now in this particular tree. It's quite a rare variety to find. So, and it's still quite young, and it's tucked back here just because it's quite precious, and eventually you'll be able to see it from the street once it's mature. But I figured I'd let it get established and large enough before it makes its grand appearance for the public. So anyway, yeah, you get the first look. Another one of our parking lot trees here is this one, and I have the hardest time identifying this tree, especially when it's spring and summer, when it's just green like this. But we'll take a look and see what we can figure out to help us learn this tree. This is Nyssa sylvatica, the black tupelo, and so this is in the family. Well, it's actually in its own family now, Nyssaceae, but botanists will often lump it into Cornaceae, which is the family of dogwoods, so super confusing. But here, let's look. Alternate leaf arrangement, fairly glabrous, kind of glossy foliage, veins somewhat present. Let's see, there's actually flowers here, and it is a dioecious plant, and this looks to be the female. So maybe this is something that we can focus on and look for when identifying it. But the main attraction to this tree is in autumn, when this looks like it's on fire. The fall color is extraordinary on Nyssa sylvatica. So yeah, it's worth looking around. Look for those floral parts. Look for the glossy leaves, and yeah, hopefully we'll be able to identify it in your exam. Another member of Nyssaceae is this tree here. Sorry, the lighting is a bit off, but we'll look at it closely. Maybe if we get some shade, we can take a look. This is the genus Davidia, and you've probably seen Davidia before if you've ever been to the Arboretum. This is the handkerchief tree, or the dove tree. Has various common names, and you absolutely can't miss it when it's in full bract. So technically not the flowers that you see, but yeah, they look like wads of tissue kind of strewn about, but this is what the tree looks like. So ours hasn't flowered yet, it's still quite young, but it's distinctive in that its foliage is this incredible large heart-shaped, and focus on the edges and the very definite serrations that gives the ID of this away. So again, small tree, but pay attention to the serrated edges. So, oh, I want to show you something really special. If you need something fancy, bougie, you find a variegated form of Davidia. This is a selection called Lady Sunshine, I believe. So look, perfectly demonstrates what to look for in Davidia. The cordate leaves, and look at the fine serrations there. Very definite, very distinct, that gives this tree away. Oh, you almost don't need the handkerchiefs, huh? You ready? Alright, next family is Oleaceae. So this is Oleae, the olive. So it's not on your list because it's a broadleaf evergreen, but just thought I'd show you the founding member of this family. So let's study a few that are on your list. A very known well member of Oleaceae is the genus Jasminum, or the jasmines. So most jasmines that we're probably familiar with are actually more of the tropical species, and typically not hardy and very fragrant. So all the perfumes, etc., that have jasmine on them typically are from a tropical growing vine. But here in the temperate climate, we have this jasmine, and it's on your list. This is Jasminum Nudiflorum. So the name is helpful because think nude, like naked, basically. Florum. So basically the flowers on these are yellow and they're borne on nude stems. So this is the winter blooming jasmine, and as you can see here, it's in our parking island. So it's quite an aggressive grower, but very adaptable in the landscape. So winter flowers that are yellow, not fragrant unfortunately, but to identify it, you can see all the diagnostic traits for Oleaceae. So we've got the opposite leaf arrangement, and with this particular species, we have the leaves there with 3 leaflets, and the green stems. So those are things to look for with this particular jasmine. Alright, someone's random yard. Point out a member of the Oleaceae. This is Forsythia. So Forsythia is actually easily recognized in the landscape when it's in bloom. You'll see it all around. It's very common, and it's just these branches of sprays of yellow flowers, and you can see the remnants of them. So they're obviously finished, and it's all leafed out here. But it has all the qualities of Oleaceae that we should look for. Opposite leaf arrangement, and also in terms of habit. It tends to be kind of rangy and kind of, but kind of twiggy there at the base. So to identify this when it's not in bloom, look for the leaf arrangement and at least narrow it down to this family. But usually remnants of the old flowers still remain in this particular genus. So that's Forsythia. Alright, so this plant right behind me, as I'm walking backwards, is probably one of my favorite genera, and it's got its own family now. It actually used to be in Ranunculaceae, I believe, and but now it's in its own family, Peoniaceae. So the peony. So I don't know if many people have actually seen species peonies, but this is one of them. So pretty easy to recognize. Most people are familiar with what I call grandma's peonies, which are the herbaceous peonies that everyone loves. Those are the bushes that have pretty similar flowers, really fluffy, double, and they're herbaceous, so they die back year after year. But other class of Peonia, the genus, are what we refer to as tree peonies. So they're not really a tree, as you can see. They're more of a woody shrub, and the big difference is this does not die back to the ground, and this one you do not cut back each year, which some gardeners have made this horrible mistake because these are very slow to grow. So whacking this back basically sets it back, I don't know, several decades. No, I'm kidding. A few years. So this one you treat like a shrub, and as you can see, let's zoom in a little bit closer, you can see the woody stems that it produces. So it's mid-May right now, so many species are in full bloom, and there's a few I want to show you. This particular one is Peonia Delavia, and it's a yellow form of this species. So the normal, or traditional form I should say, is a red one, and it's still young and kind of shy and finished up here, so sorry I can't show you. Oh, here. So that's a typical Peonia Delavia. Quite lovely, beautiful texture of foliage, And even though they have such a short bloom period in the spring, they're actually beautiful in the landscape because of the texture of the foliage, and they also have pretty nice fall color. So again, these are species. I want to show you one more species and then a few snazzy hybrids. Alright, so we're coming up with the next species of Peonia that I want to talk to you about and show you. So let's get down on our knees and admire this gorgeous, gorgeous flower. This is Peonia rockii, or the Joseph Rock's peony. So it's, depending on which botanist you talk to, people will call it straight, species, Peonia rockii, or some might just say it's a subspecies or a variety of Peonia fructicosa. So whichever, I don't care. But I would say this is a very personal connection with this particular species, because when I was an early teenager, I went to visit a friend of mine who had this beautiful garden, and I saw this from a distance and just instantly fell in love because I saw its flowers and I noticed its incredible scent. And rockii is pretty easy to identify because of the beautiful deep purple flares there in the center, and there are many rockii hybrids. So anytime you see a tree peony that has those purple flares at the base, it most likely has this in its parentage. It's so pretty even when it's finished and fallen to the ground. This is a hybrid tree peony that I want to show off. It's so beautiful. This one's so shy, doesn't want to show its stamens, but it's so pretty. Hi, so I'm at the Center for Urban Horticulture right now, and I'm gonna keep going on and on about peonies because I'm just kind of obsessed with them. So I want to compare the herbaceous and the tree peony, and also introduce you to the hybrid between the two, also known as the intersectional hybrids, or the Ito hybrids of peony. So let's take a look. So when most people think of peonies, they think of this plant. So this is your classic herbaceous peony. So herbaceous meaning it'll die back down to the ground every fall and lay dormant for the winter, and then of course come up in spring and bloom in late spring, early summer. So these are obviously not open yet, but you can see its habit. So the herbaceous peony has been crossed with the tree peony that we looked at earlier, and the result is the Ito hybrids. So here's the fragrance garden in full bloom right now here at the Center for Urban Horticulture, and I want to show you two varieties of the Ito hybrids. So if you look at this, you think, oh, okay, it looks like herbaceous. It has the habit of a herbaceous peony, but the flowers and the foliage in a way too are more like a tree peony. So it's actually a hybrid between the two classes. So if you look closely here at the base, it's pretty herbaceous but also kind of woody. So it's pretty cool when you compare the two, and if you're familiar with both, to see the resulting hybrids that have been developed. So here's another example. Now we introduce yellow into the spectrum of color, because most tree peonies, or herbaceous peonies I should say, are in the pinks and whites and reds, and the color palette's pretty limited. But when you begin introducing tree peony hybrids, much like the Peonia Delavia that we saw, then we can have a broader range of colors. So they're pretty remarkable and readily available nowadays. They used to be quite expensive because they were slow to propagate, but now they've cracked the code, as they say, in terms of propagating them, and they're more readily available. So these are the intersectional or Ito hybrids of peonies. Right, so I pulled over a random sidewalk here just to talk about the next family, which is the Plantain Ace, and the lone genus in that family is Platanus. So these are the London plane trees, and pretty easy to recognize in the landscape. They have maple-like foliage. So not a maple, because if you look at the leaf arrangement, it is alternating. And basically, I call it the fuzzy maple. That's the kind of the best way to really describe it. Heavily pubescent, especially in its new growth. And the new growth, of course, has this nice tannish, beigey color to it. Again, really fuzzy, soft. But another wonderful diagnostic trait that this has is the bark. It is quite marbled and quite attractive, especially as they get older. So, very common tree in the landscape, and so yeah, pretty easy to identify. Let's look at the leaves here closely. It's kind of pretty, isn't it? Backlit like that. So very distinctive shape of the leaf, again, maple-like, but it's the pubescence that will give this tree away.